Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm back after 3 tournaments, and I came home 2 days ago after being away for almost a month, and I slept for 25 hours, which I've never done in my life. And yeah, now I came to Šibenik, which is a town in Croatia, because Lucia is one of the judges on a festival here. So anyway, I'm in some weird apartment with my friends. And I don't really have a desk. This is some, I don't know, something to put clothes in where I'm recording. But yeah, okay, I'm going to be covering all games I played in the 3 tournaments. So far, I've recorded one of them about 2 weeks back, but I wanted to finish all the tournaments and play as best I can before I start covering all the games seriously. Okay, I don't want to reveal too much, but it wasn't easy, and it wasn't easy to play. I faced very tough opponents, especially in the last 2 tournaments, and all the games were tough, and all the games were very instructive. And so far, I've done my own analysis for most of the games, had a look at some of them with an engine. I can learn a lot from this, and hopefully you can too. Anyway, this is round 2 of Silver Lake Open. Now, Silver Lake is a lake, or basically a part of a river in the eastern part of Serbia. And we were in a nice hotel where the tournament was held. In round 1, I faced a Bulgarian FIDE master, and I lost in a drawn position, which was harder for me to play, so it's understandable. In round 2, I'm facing an opponent I've played before once, 2 years ago. And I actually drew him in some rook endgame where I was a pawn up. You can find the game on the channel. It was round 1 of Novi Sad 2019. This time he has the white pieces though. And he played the 2 knights against my Caro-Kann, which I did not expect. I'd expected something else. I played what I usually play, so bishop g4, which is the main line, and after h3 I took. Although at this point I had a serious consideration to just play bishop h5 and go for those crazy lines which go ed cd, bishop b5, knight c6, knight e5, and if you don't know the theory, it's complicated, but I do. But I wanted to get into this anyway. So bishop takes, queen takes, pawn e6, g3. And now the main move is knight f6. I almost always play knight d7 here because I want to trade on e4. And if I trade this knight off, he has an easy c4, d4. If I don't trade this knight off, then my knight on d7 is worse than the knight on c3, even though the knight on c3 is blocking his pawns. So I usually go knight d7 anyway. Bishop g2, and now knight g2 f6. And my next move is going to be d4, basically no matter what he does. So queen e2, which is played. I didn't really know what to do against this move, but I've seen it before, so this is something I had to look up after the game and had to understand. I think the idea is to transfer the queen to c4 to threaten some stuff on c6, although I'm still not sure. d4, knight e4, knight e4, queen e4. I mean, if you're going to recapture with the queen, then queen e2 doesn't really make too much sense. Unless there was a hidden threat if I don't take the e4. Okay, knight f6, and now queen to c4. And here, I know people play bishop e7, although I wasn't sure how that works, really, so I just played queen c7, which defends, and I've played this setup many times where my bishop gets to d6, my queen goes to c7, and I always have pressure on g3. So I like this, and I played what I know. So he played d4, I played bishop d6, a4, a5. I'm not sure I have to play a5, because I am creating some weaknesses, but I wanted to play it because I don't want to allow a5 from him. Queen b3, which makes sense, wants to play c4. h6, I want to prevent bishop g5 because that's really the only useful square for his bishop to go to. I mean, if the bishop does go to g5, I'm going to play h6, but then he could take and we have a complicated game, which I'm not sure he would do, but he could take and castle queenside. If I play h6, then of course bishop f4 loses a pawn, bishop e3. The bishop is better on e3 than on c1 because of d5, bishop b6, but it's not much better on e3. And especially since I can maybe block with knight d5. after c4 and something happens. So both sides castle here. He played c4. I played rook f to d8. I'm of course not afraid of c5. If he ever plays c5, I think black is strategically just much better. For example, here, and if bishop f4, I can just retreat and then get my knight into d5, recapture with the queen. So for example, if something like this happens, then I play knight d5, and if he ever takes, I would always take with a piece. And eventually I'm going to play g6, bishop g7, and this pawn is going to be too weak because I always have e5. But of course he's never going to play c5. He played bishop e3. I went rook d7, not because I want rook a d8, because that would lose to bishop b6 in many situations, of course with a fork on the queen and the rook, but because I want to get this rook to e8. Okay, rook f to d1, rook e8, and now d5. And this is the first critical position in the game, where I'm not sure it's really easy to go wrong for black. I think there are 4 good moves here, and I actually considered all 4, and I wasted too much time on this position. My intention was, since I'd expected d5, to play c5 straight away. The idea of c5, even though it seems counterintuitive, is that a trade is going to happen on d4 anyway. He's going to be left with an isolated pawn, or if he takes on e6, he improves my rook, and this structure is of course perfectly equal. So if he ever takes on e6, I don't think he has any winning chances. And if I ever take on d4, I think my position is slightly more pleasant for me. So I'd intended c5, ended up playing it, could have played it in a second, but didn't. I tried to figure out what all the other moves were like. The first move I was calculating was bishop b4, simply ignoring what he's doing, improving my bishop, and if d6, for example, then rook e6. Again, I don't think I have any issues here. Instead of bishop b4, I could take either way. If e d5, then c d5 and c5, and we have a position that we reached in the game, basically. And if I go c d5, that I wasn't really sure about, but after c d5, e d5, something like bishop b6 and queen to b8, he's going to take this pawn now, of course, bishop takes d5. And I probably go something like bishop c7, trade of these bishops. And it should be equal, although I didn't like this because of the pressure on f7. If we look at the starting position, why would I allow him to put a bishop on d5 when he can keep a pawn on d5? So I played c5. Now, of course, I did not expect him to take on e6. Basically, that would be a waste of tempo, in my opinion. He played bishop d2, which is a sensible move, and e d5, c d5, and rook d2, e7. And here I was so happy with my position. I'm not sure what the engine says here. Let's check actually, because I didn't check this one with an engine. Okay, it says 0.3 for white if he plays rook e1, 0.1 if he plays queen b5, and black is better with all other moves. I mean, what does queen b5 do? If that's the only move for an advantage, yeah, that doesn't make too much sense. Okay, so I think even though the engine thinks it's equal, it should be easier to play for black because all of my pieces are perfect and his really are not. Okay, queen b5, I think I just go b6, defend my pawn. Okay, queen f3. And here I think I made my first serious mistake. So my intention was to transfer my knight to g6. That may seem weird because the knight is sort of putting pressure on d4, but it's not really putting pressure on d5, excuse me. I don't really want to take on d5. If I could, I wouldn't take on d5, because that would open up his bishop, make my bishop vulnerable, and I basically don't want to win this pawn. My idea of transferring the knight to g6 was to be able to get my rooks into play easily, and to make sure that I can never get mated. This knight, even though f6 looks sensible, isn't really good on f6, or at least it wasn't in my opinion. Now here's my analysis after the game. What I should have done, what must be much better, is simply knight e4. Now, the idea of knight e4 is remarkable. And this I didn't see during the game. When I was going over the game later on, I saw this idea and it just seemed so obvious and I couldn't believe I'd missed it during the game. The idea is, of course, to go c4. and then put pressure on f2 and g3. So for example, queen b6, threaten to take on g3. Okay, what does he do? Let's say bishop to e1. Okay, c4. Let's say bishop to f1, queen b6. Now there is no more defense. You just lose a pawn. If bishop takes c4, then knight takes g3. Of course, this is much better for black. So against knight e4, I'm not sure what white does. Let's just check with an engine, because I couldn't find a good defense. Okay, the engine does say bishop f1, just trading pawns. So what can he do? Can he play b3 to prevent c4? I think I just play c4 anyway. That was my intention. Yeah, this is -1. Because he cannot take. If he takes, then just take. Oh, take on f. Oh, take on f2 straight away. Okay, take on f2, and if he takes with the king, and bishop check. This is -5. Wow. Okay. Ah, this is a great idea. -5, -6. This is just lost. I go. Wait. But okay, here, and here, and here. Ah, I take on c4. Okay. This is too much. I did not see this. But basically, this knight e4 idea with c5 was really good, and I missed it during the game. Thankfully, I'm very happy I found it after the game, but that's not as good. Instead, I went knight d7. Bishop f1 anyway. Knight e5. He played queen f5 here. I played knight g6. Okay. And here he started thinking, he thought for about 20 minutes, I think. He ended up playing bishop to b5. And okay, I was calculating bishop to b5 before I played knight d7. And my intention was to sacrifice the exchange. Now, that may seem far away from here, but it's actually not that far away. The idea is if he plays bishop to b5, I want to play rook e5, rook 8, e7, give up my rook on e5, transfer my queen to c8, and put pressure on h3. Why does he win the exchange? Because his bishops are going to be on d3 and on c3, and my rook on e5 has no squares. So I intentionally went into this. Of course, after bishop to b5, I can play rook d8. And I remember looking at this position with Milan after the game, and we just thought, well, what does white do? Black's pieces are really good. How does white improve his position? He could go h4, h5, but I'm not sure my knight is much worse off on e5, on d7, even on b6, on c4. I could even go knight f8, knight d7. I mean, I just couldn't find a good plan for white. So if I just don't give up the exchange, I think I'm fine. But very quickly I just played rook e5 and went in for this queen f3. And of course I can still just play rook d8 and not do that. But I wanted to do that. I wanted to keep my rook on the e file because I thought that way I would have... Well, I would be... Okay, I'm going to admit this honestly. I thought I would be better if I give up this exchange. I thought I would have a crazy attack on his king, which is just not true. That's just a stupid misjudgment of the position. Okay, rook 87 and of course h4. And he doesn't have to play bishop d3, bishop c3 straight away, but he will. So I played queen c8. He can take this one, which I really thought he couldn't do. He played bishop to d3, and next move he's going to play bishop to c3. And this was all my intention. I wanted all of this to happen. Little did I know that I'm completely losing. Okay, queen h3, bishop to c3, and knight takes h4. This was all, well, this was all planned. Of course he cannot take on h4 because rook g5 and mate. Okay, yeah. So he takes, he doesn't take straight away, plays queen h1. Okay, and after queen h1, I realized that I have nothing here. My original idea was to play knight f3, which of course makes no sense. Queen f3 and rook h4, but he just plays queen g2. And before, so here in this position, after bishop b5, I saw this position where I play knight f3 and rook h5, and I thought, wow, okay. This seems good enough. If I missed something, I probably still have a good attack. Of course, I just have nothing. And after queen h1, I have to take. Knight f3 just gives up a piece. So I took. He took my rook. And yeah, there's not much to do here for black, except wait to lose. This is just over. It's completely over. And I played on for a while. You can see how he beat me. Had to trade rooks. tried to set up a blockade, and this was my idea. I'll show you what my idea was. I'll just show you the setup I wanted to go for. Okay, so this was my setup. I thought if I can somehow make sure that the E file is covered, the H file is covered, he has no way to make progress because I can always blockade on these 3 squares. However, one critical move makes that impossible, F4. And after F4 I have to take. Takes, and now it's really hard to set up a blockade because he can enter with his king as well. So bishop d6, king g2, bishop e5, rook f1. And if I have to defend the f5 pawn, no more blockade. And the game went on for about 10 more moves. And eventually he set up double pressure on this pawn, and here I resigned. I'm basically in Zugzwang. He's going to enter on the e file, and that's going to be it. Completely losing. So, lost 2 in a row against high-rated opponents. It's always tough when that happens, especially because in round 1 I could have just played bishop e4 on last turn and just had a drawn endgame. And this game, well, this I deserved to lose. I really did. I mean, I completely misjudged the position. I just thinking that exchange sack was fine was just stupid. And not even that, thinking that I have a big attack when I have nothing. So I don't know why I did that. I think that's a mistake in visualization. Probably something else mixed in there as well, but that's the way it was, and I lost the game. Okay, see you tomorrow with round 3. Again, sorry for being away for too long. Wanted to play tournaments without doing anything else, and now I'm going to be recording all 20 something, almost 30 games, one each day, until I play my next tournament, which is in about 3 weeks. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for waiting again. Stay tuned for more chess. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.